The laboratory hummed with quiet intensity as J. Park adjusted her microscope. Outside, the research station on Europa's moon looked like a silver bubble against the dark expanse of space. She had been working for months, tracking something unusual in human genetic samples. Jay wasn't like most researchers. Where others saw complex data, she saw patterns. Her colleagues often joked that she could read between the lines of scientific reports. But today, something felt different. The mouse in the containment unit was behaving strangely. When the small white mouse looked directly at her, Jay felt something she couldn't explain. It wasn't just a random animal stare. There was intention behind those tiny black eyes. For a moment, she could almost hear something, not words, but a clear sense of communication. She blinked, thinking she was imagining things. Scientists didn't believe in telepathy or magical connections. They believed in hard data, precise measurements, and verifiable results. Yet something was happening that defied traditional scientific understanding. The mouse moved closer to the glass, its whiskers twitching. Jay realized it was responding to her thoughts before she even moved. When she thought about giving it food, the mouse positioned itself near the feeding tube. When she considered changing the laboratory's temperature, the mouse seemed to anticipate her decision. Her hands began recording the observations, her fingers typing rapidly. Each movement was calculated, each note precise. She knew her superiors would want concrete evidence. They wouldn't accept anything less than absolute proof. Days turned into weeks. Jay ran hundreds of tests. She isolated genetic markers, conducted brain scans, and performed complex neurological evaluations. The more she investigated, the more bizarre her findings became. There was something unique in human DNA that allowed for an unprecedented form of communication. Other researchers had theories about animal communication. Some believed animals had complex communication systems. Others thought they could understand basic emotional states. But no one had ever suggested that humans could actually hear animal thoughts. The research station became her entire world. Jay barely slept, consuming endless cups of synthetic coffee and nutrient packages. Her dedication was remarkable. Where others would have given up, she pushed forward, driven by an unexplainable curiosity. One night, while most of her colleagues were sleeping, she discovered something extraordinary. The genetic sequence she had been studying wasn't just unusual, it was revolutionary. Humans possessed a unique neurological pathway that allowed for quantum-level communication with other living beings. The implications were massive. If her research was correct, humans could potentially communicate with animals across different species, understanding their thoughts and emotions in ways never before imagined. It wasn't just about hearing sounds or reading body language. This was true, deep communication. Her first real test came with a small group of laboratory animals, mice, rats, and even a rescued street dog brought into the research facility. Each responded to her in ways that defied conventional scientific explanation. They seemed to understand her intentions, her emotions, her very thoughts. Jay knew she was standing at the edge of something incredible. This wasn't just a scientific discovery. This was a fundamental shift in understanding how life communicated. Humans, often considered just another species, were actually something more. The research station's computer systems began compiling her data. Complex algorithms processed her findings, creating intricate models of genetic communication. Each model suggested the same thing. Humans had a unique ability that set them apart from every other known species. As the first rays of artificial light began illuminating the research station, Jay Park realized her life would never be the same. She had discovered something that would change humanity's understanding of itself and its place in the universe. The mouse in the containment unit watched her, its tiny eyes holding a strange intelligence. For the first time, Jay didn't just see an experimental subject. She saw a fellow living being, capable of complex thoughts and emotions. Something extraordinary was happening, and she was right at the center of it. The Galactic Council chamber was silent. Delegates from 100 different worlds sat frozen, their various alien physiologies displaying shock in unique ways. Some changed color, others vibrated slightly. But all eyes were fixed on Yoon Kim. Yoon stood calmly, his hands holding a simple data pad. Behind him, holographic images showed human researchers communicating with different animal species. What looked like simple experiments to humans represented a complete revolution to the alien races. Communication is not just about sound, Yoon explained. It's about understanding. Humans can now translate thoughts across species boundaries. The Centauri representative, a crystalline being that resembled a walking prism, shifted uncomfortably. Its translator unit buzzed with confusion. Humans had always been considered a young, somewhat primitive species. Now they were presenting evidence that challenged everything known about interspecies communication. A recording played. A human researcher whispered to a small monkey. The monkey responded by solving complex mathematical problems without verbal instruction. Another clip showed a woman communicating with deep-sea creatures, understanding their migration patterns with unprecedented clarity. The Aquarian delegate, a water-based intelligent being, leaked dark fluid from its communication nodes. This was impossible. Their own advanced translation technologies took years to develop minimal cross-species understanding. Humans were doing this naturally. Yoon continued his presentation. Each slide revealed more shocking information. Humans could understand animal emotions, predict their behaviors, and even mediate conflicts between different species. What seemed like a simple genetic mutation was proving to be a fundamental evolutionary advantage. Political tensions began to rise. Some alien representatives saw this as a potential threat. If humans could communicate so easily with different life forms, what else might they be capable of doing? The implications were enormous. The research station on Europa, where J. Park had first discovered this ability, became the most watched scientific facility in the known galaxy. Researchers from multiple worlds requested access, hoping to understand the human communication capability. But humans were careful. They knew the power of their discovery and weren't willing to share everything immediately. Each interaction was carefully documented, each communication method studied with scientific precision. Small experiments began happening across different planets. Human communication specialists were sent to resolve ecological conflicts. They could speak with local fauna, understand environmental challenges, and provide solutions that no technological system could achieve. On a remote mining planet, a human researcher prevented a massive ecological disaster by communicating with local insect colonies. The insects were about to trigger a chemical reaction that would have destroyed the planet's entire ecosystem. By understanding their communication, the human redirected their collective behavior. Another incident involved ocean life on a water planet. Massive marine creatures were about to attack a research station. A human specialist communicated with them, understanding their territorial concerns and negotiating a peaceful resolution. The Galactic Council watched these reports with a mixture of fear and fascination. Humans were no longer just another species. They were becoming something more, a bridge between different forms of life. Yoon Kim's final slide showed a simple message. Communication is not just about language, it's about understanding. The chamber erupted in multiple languages, translation devices working overtime to capture the discussions. Some delegates argued for immediate restriction of human research. Others saw potential scientific collaboration. Outside the council chamber, news was spreading. Social networks across different worlds began discussing the human discovery. Memes, visual representations, and analysis began circulating faster than official reports. Yoon looked calm. He knew this was just the beginning. Humans had discovered something fundamental about communication and life itself. They were no longer just observers of the universe. They were becoming its interpreters. The mouse from the original research, now a symbol of this discovery, seemed to watch everything with knowing eyes. A small creature that had helped unlock a massive universal secret. First contact wasn't about meeting alien civilizations anymore. It was about understanding the complex language of life itself, and humans had just become its most fluent speakers. The planet Kepler 452b looked like a powder keg ready to explode. Two galactic civilizations, the Mineral Consortium and the Ecological Preservation Alliance, were moments away from a massive conflict that could destroy an entire planetary ecosystem. J. Park stepped onto the planet's surface, her communication equipment minimal. Unlike previous diplomatic missions with complex technological devices, she carried nothing more than a standard research tablet and her unique human ability. The planet's surface was complex. Layers of mineral-rich landscapes mixed with intricate, biological systems that seemed to breathe and move like living organisms. Most species would see resources to exploit. Jay saw a delicate, interconnected world. Her first connection came through the smallest creatures. Microscopic organisms that lived beneath the rocky terrain began sending her detailed information. They weren't just simple life forms. They were complex communication networks, understanding every vibration and chemical change in the environment. The Mineral Consortium wanted to extract rare minerals from the planet's core. Their massive drilling machines were already positioned, ready to tear through kilometers of planetary crust. The Ecological Preservation Alliance argued that such actions would destroy millions of undiscovered species. Jay closed her eyes and listened, not with her ears but with something deeper. The planet's life forms began sharing their stories. Tiny creatures explained how their survival depended on specific mineral compositions. Larger organisms showed how drilling would create chain reactions, destroying entire ecosystem networks. Her tablet recorded everything, but the real communication happened beyond technology. She was translating an entire planet's language, a language no translation device had ever understood before. When the first drilling machine began its descent, Jay raised her hand. Something extraordinary happened. The machine's operators, from two different alien species, suddenly felt an overwhelming sense of connection with the planet's life systems. "Stop," she said simply. But her word carried the collective emotions of millions of living organisms. The drilling stopped. Alien representatives watched in shock. Jay wasn't just presenting scientific data. She was showing them the planet's living network, its complex relationships, its delicate balance. What looked like a simple mineral-rich world was actually a sophisticated living system. The Mineral Consortium's lead representative, a being composed of metallic structures, started experiencing emotional responses. For the first time, they could feel the pain of the ecosystem they were about to destroy. The Ecological Preservation Alliance representatives were equally stunned. Negotiations that would have taken months were resolved in hours. Jay demonstrated how alternative mineral extraction methods could be developed without destroying the planet's core biological systems. She showed them pathways of cooperation, not destruction. News spread quickly across galactic communication networks. Humans had done something unprecedented. They hadn't just prevented a conflict. They had created understanding between different species and an entire planetary ecosystem. The planet itself seemed to breathe differently. Where tension had existed moments before, a new sense of balance emerged. J. Park stood at the center, a bridge between technological ambition and living complexity. Scientific teams arrived to study her methods, but they quickly realized her ability couldn't be easily replicated. This was a uniquely human skill, understanding life not as separate systems, but as interconnected networks of communication. As solar winds swept across Kepler 452b, Jay realized she had done more than prevent a conflict. She had shown the galaxy a new way of understanding existence. Communication was no longer about words or technological translations. It was about feeling, sensing, and truly listening. The small creatures beneath her feet continued their complex dance, now safe, their stories preserved. And humanity had proven that sometimes the most powerful technology is the ability to understand. The genetic laboratory looked like something from another world. Advanced machines hummed quietly, while Dr. Sung Ho examined complex holographic displays showing human DNA structures. Something extraordinary was happening, and he knew it would change everything humans understood about their own evolution. Human genetic research had always been fascinating, but this discovery was different. Hidden deep within human DNA, scientists had found a unique quantum entanglement mechanism that allowed unprecedented communication across biological systems. Most species communicated through limited methods: sound, chemical signals, electrical impulses. Humans had something more. Their genetic structure contained microscopic pathways that could transfer information at speeds and depths never seen before. Dr. Ho's team discovered that certain humans possessed a special genetic marker. This marker wasn't just a simple mutation. It was a complete evolutionary adaptation that allowed direct thought transfer with other living organisms. Young children were showing remarkable abilities. A 6-year-old girl in Tokyo could communicate with plants in her family's garden. A boy in Brazil understood complex migration patterns of local bird species without any training. These weren't isolated incidents anymore. They were becoming a global phenomenon. The scientific community was divided. Some researchers were excited, others were terrified. This genetic breakthrough suggested humans were evolving into something completely unexpected. Genetic scans revealed that this ability wasn't random. It followed specific inheritance patterns. Families with strong ecological backgrounds or those living close to natural environments showed higher rates of this communication ability. Interestingly, the ability seemed to grow stronger with each generation. What started as simple animal communication was developing into complex interspecies understanding. Humans were becoming biological translators on a planetary scale. Global research centers began collecting data. They wanted to understand how this genetic mechanism worked. Was it a result of environmental adaptation, a random mutation, or something more deliberate? The quantum entanglement mechanism allowed humans to perceive information beyond traditional sensory limits. They could understand complex ecological relationships, predict animal behaviors, and even mediate conflicts between different species. Satellite images showed fascinating results. Areas with human communicators experienced better environmental balance. Forests recovered faster. Animal populations stabilized. It was as if humans were becoming active participants in planetary ecosystems, not just observers. Dr. Ho's team discovered that this genetic ability was linked to human brain structures. Specific neural pathways allowed for quantum-level information transfer. What scientists once considered impossible was now becoming a measurable scientific fact. The implications were massive. Humans could potentially help restore damaged ecosystems, understand complex environmental challenges, and create unprecedented collaborations between different life forms. Alien scientific delegations watched these developments with a mixture of fear and fascination. Humans were no longer just another species. They were becoming something entirely new, biological bridges between different forms of life. Genetic databases from around the world showed a clear trend. The communication ability was spreading. More children were being born with enhanced interspecies communication skills. Evolution was happening in real time. Some researchers suggested this was nature's response to global environmental challenges. Humans were developing abilities that would help them survive and protect planetary ecosystems. Dr. Ho understood something profound. This wasn't just a genetic mutation. This was a fundamental shift in human evolutionary potential. Humans were becoming something more than they had ever imagined. The laboratory's computer systems continued processing data. Each analysis revealed new layers of complexity. Humans were writing a new chapter in biological understanding. Outside the research center, a small group of children played in a garden. To an untrained eye, they looked normal, but Dr. Ho knew better. These children were the future, living proof of humanity's extraordinary potential. The quantum communication ability was more than a scientific discovery. It was a glimpse into humanity's next evolutionary stage, a stage where understanding wasn't limited by traditional communication barriers. As evening fell, Dr. Sung Ho looked at the genetic data one more time. Somewhere between complex molecular structures and quantum pathways, humans were discovering their true potential, and this was just the beginning. The diplomatic ship glided silently through the star-filled darkness. J. Park stood at the main communication center, her eyes focused on the complex holographic displays showing multiple planetary systems. Humans had become the most important diplomatic species in the known galaxy. Their unique ability to communicate across biological boundaries made them essential mediators in complex interstellar conflicts. The current mission was delicate. Two advanced civilizations were on the brink of a massive war that could destroy entire star systems. Traditional diplomatic methods had failed. Only human communication specialists could bridge the impossible gap. Jay understood something fundamental that other species missed. Communication wasn't just about exchanging words. It was about understanding deeper connections, feeling the emotional currents that ran beneath surface conflicts. Her team consisted of specialized human communicators. Each had unique abilities to connect with different life forms. Some could understand mechanical intelligences. Others could communicate with crystalline beings or energy-based life forms. The first contact happened quickly. As the diplomatic ship approached the conflict zone, Jay began her work. She didn't use complex technological devices. Her method was simple. Pure, direct communication. The mechanical civilization saw conflict as a logical solution. The energy-based civilization viewed destruction as a form of transformation. Between these two extreme perspectives, millions of lives were at risk. Jay closed her eyes. Her ability worked beyond traditional understanding. She became a living bridge translating not just words but entire cultural perspectives. The mechanical beings felt her understanding. The energy-based civilization sensed her deep empathy. Hours passed. What would have taken years of negotiations was resolved in a single communication session. Jay showed both civilizations their shared connections, their mutual vulnerabilities, their potential for cooperation. The galactic communication networks buzzed with excitement. Humans had done it again. They had prevented a conflict that seemed impossible to resolve. Their diplomatic corps was becoming legendary. Young humans were now training in specialized communication academies. They learned not just languages, but deep empathetic connections. Understanding became their primary weapon, compassion their most advanced technology. Some alien civilizations initially resisted human involvement. They saw humans as a young species, potentially dangerous. But repeated successful mediations changed those perspectives. Humans weren't conquerors. They were connectors. On distant planets, human communication specialists worked quietly. They helped resolve ecological challenges, prevented resource conflicts, and created understanding between completely different life forms. A mining colony discovered a rare mineral world. Traditional approaches would have led to massive destruction. A human communication team arrived, understanding the planet's living systems. They found sustainable extraction methods that preserved the planet's complex life networks. Another team helped a mechanical civilization understand the emotional needs of a biological species. What seemed like an impossible communication gap was resolved through human intervention. The human diplomatic corps grew, not through military might but through understanding. They were becoming the galaxy's peace weavers, creating connections where others saw only conflict. Jay Park represented the best of this new human potential. She wasn't just a diplomat. She was a living translation system, understanding the deepest layers of communication. As their ship moved between star systems, her team prepared for the next mission. Each challenge was an opportunity to create understanding. Each conflict was a chance to show the power of compassionate communication. The galaxy was changing. Humans were no longer just another species trying to survive. They had become something more. Bridges between different forms of existence, translators of the universal language of life. Outside the ship's windows, stars continued their ancient dance. Planets spun in their orbits, and humans moved between them, carrying their extraordinary ability to connect, to understand, to heal. Jay looked at her team. Young, diverse, connected. They represented humanity's true potential. Not as conquerors, but as communicators. Not as observers, but as active participants in the grand cosmic story. The diplomatic mission continued. Another conflict awaited. Another opportunity to transform misunderstanding into connection.